other folks on here as
All right.
well. So
we are seeing the agenda and we are seeing the chat.
okay, great. All right, so I guess I would say let's get started. I guess I'll call on folks and then I'll introduce myself after everyone else has. So other than I'll just say I'm the acting chair, but I'll do a little more with introduction afterwards. So I will start with David. And David, if you could introduce yourself and also feel free to share your experience with sidewalk conditions in Arlington.
All right. My name's David Patton. We have a couple of guests at the meeting tonight. I'll let them introduce themselves when we go around. I'm a transportation planner with the county. I've been county staff for quite a while. I'm the liaison to this committee, the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And we sort of have a convention now that we have a theme for the beginning of the meeting, and it's to talk about sidewalk conditions and experience with sidewalk conditions. Well, I have a negative experience I want to share, and I'm going to pop a photo into the chat so people can see my negative sidewalk experience. Let me know if you can see that.
Not
yet. Oh,
not
the
yet.
chat.
Can you see it yet?
There it is.
In the chat?
There it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I can actually put it in the middle of the screen if we want to do that.
Wow, it's a nasty looking sidewalk.
It is. This is, and the reason I chose this is, well, if you work for the county for long enough, you begin to see things that you built that were once brand new, shiny, fresh, and clean, develop problems. This is South Joyce Street down by the Pentagon and the Air Force Memorial. And we built these brand new sidewalks about 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago. And it was a federally funded project. At the time, it had two connections. At the time, it was part of preparing for the coming streetcar project. The streetcar was to go down Columbia Pike, go across Joyce Street, turn on Army Navy Drive, and da-da-da-da. And it was also funded as part of mitigation efforts to avoid making a new 14th Street bridge across the Potomac. So the federal government, FHWA, Highway Administration, looked for ways to do things in Arlington that would reduce stress on the 14th Street bridge. And they thought that this sidewalk project fit the bill. Well, now, this little piece of sidewalk has been sort of ground zero for major construction as Columbia Pike gets reoriented and as the cemetery expands southward to take more property to expand. And this piece of sidewalk, which is on the west side of Joyce Street, is a mess. And it's been used for construction equipment, and they put this hydrant in the middle of the sidewalk, I think, to fill water trucks for the construction project. So I saw this when I was out there about a week and a half ago. I have a bicycle and pedestrian counter at this location. I don't visit it very often, but I went out there and it needed some attention, and this just screamed at me. So I've been burning up the emails since, and I connected yesterday with a fellow he's the Federal Highways project engineer, and he's the same guy who helped me build this sidewalk 10 years ago. And I said, Michael, what is going on here? He said, oh, yeah, well, we're not happy about that either. So I don't know the whole history. I don't need to know the history. I'll find out eventually. But I said, will you please do something, put some orange cones out there, and we've got to fix this. This is not acceptable for a $1 million sidewalk that the federal government built and that we encourage people to use as an alternative, for example, to riding bicycles on this busy street that carries a lot of truck traffic. So that's my very current, very not happy at the moment sidewalk experience.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Excuse me?
Is that under 395 or?
It is
north
under
of it?
395.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
this is Joyce Street, just north of Army Navy Drive. There are 9 bridges that are part of the interstate spaghetti bowl there, and that's right there.
Thank you for sharing. I hope I hope it becomes a success story again.
Well, is it convenient for people walking their dogs? I mean,
It is kind of a target, so I did not give it a sniff test. But
All right. Well, I'm gonna move through. I'm gonna start with the names that I see across my screen here. So I'm gonna go to Austin Pierce next.
Sure. Happy to meet all of you. This is my first time joining one of these meetings. I suppose I'll be a little bit biased here, and I'll share a picture as well of the sidewalk that is on the street that I live on. And see, I'm not really sure if there's anything that can be done about this, but the sidewalk is just very narrow. And not only is it narrow, but there's a good half dozen or more signposts, utility poles, whatever that really break up the sidewalk and make it so that you can't even walk 2 people wide down this sidewalk. You gotta wait for people to pass, or you gotta squeeze between parked cars. These old utility poles have big weeds growing out of them. I've had to contact another department of the county to have them removed because they just completely block the sidewalk. And it's just, overall, it's just a real unpleasant experience to walk on.
Austin, would you tell us where exactly that is?
Of course. This is on North Rhodes Street, just north of Arlington Boulevard.
Thank you.
Thanks. Can you also tell us a little bit about yourself and why you came to your first meeting here with the Pedestrian Committee?
Of course. I've lived in Northern Virginia about 4 years now. Arlington about 1. One of the reasons I moved to Arlington was to really reduce the need to drive places. So I have the wonderful experience of being able to walk to the grocery store and walk to the metro and do a lot of stuff on foot that I didn't get to do where I used to live. And so I'm really interested in the ability of people to walk around Arlington and walk around their neighborhoods, and that means a lot to me.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Next is Patrick Kenny.
Yeah, good evening. Patrick Kenny. I live in Boston. And a member of the PAC, and I guess my experience with sidewalks is mostly in the Bluemont neighborhood. Similar to what Austin mentioned, I've noticed they're somewhat narrow with some obstructions and riffraff because they border single-family homes that have riffraff around them, and so they're somewhat narrow and crowded with cycling and pedestrian, and so yeah, that's been my experience.
Thank you. Thank you. And Jim Feaster.
Yes, Jim, I'm a member of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I live in Ballston. I used to live in Ashton Heights. And I believe that there are streets in Arlington without sidewalks whose importance exceeds the wishes of the property owners along those streets. In other words, I think that the county should there are places where we know sidewalks are necessary, but neighbors can stop the creation or production, the building of a sidewalk.
Thanks. Thanks. Let's see, who do we have next here? Mr. I guess Peter Whitehead.
Hi there, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
Fantastic. I tried to get my camera to work, but apparently Teams doesn't like my camera, so we'll just have to give up on that. My name is Peter Whitehead. I am an engineer. I've lived in Arlington on and off for about 40 years now. I used to live down in the lovely River Place Apartments, And I have moved, my net change in distance has been, I guess, about 6 blocks. I now live on Clarendon Boulevard at the corner where Il Radicchio Italian restaurant is. I'm sure lots of folks know where Il Radicchio is. If you don't know Il Radicchio, you probably know Roadside Grill. This is my first meeting. It's kind of like those of us who remember the radio days, it's like first time caller, long time listener. Always been very interested in the work of the pedestrian and the bicycle advisory committees. Particularly interested now because of the work going on at the National Science Teachers Association building. Roadside Grill, Il Radicchio, and the NSTA are all going to be torn down and more apartments are going to be put up. So we're going to take a little bit of the character in the neighborhood, replace it with a 6-story monolith, and in the process actually lose quite a bit of sidewalk, which surprised me when I saw that as a part of the plan. I would have thought that they would have wanted larger sidewalks and more accommodation for pedestrians to increase foot traffic and improve the commerce for the businesses on the ground floor. But that turns out not to be the case. So I'm very interested in the Pedestrian Advisory Committee and how we might try to encourage folks to, where there is construction going on, where sidewalks are being changed, to make them more accessible and more accommodating to pedestrians and cyclists. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to speak a little bit more about this, we will have a few minutes of public comment after we go through introductions here to talk about this just a little bit. With that, I'll move on to the next person. And I think, who do I have? I have Matt Jones.
Hey everyone, it's Matt Jones, National Mobility Manager with the National Landing Bid. Enjoying this call on the patio on this nice evening. Hope you all are enjoying the weather.
Yes. Do you want to tell us anything about, would you like to share anything about your experience with sidewalk conditions in Arlington?
Oh, Pam, no. Well, it's a lot because, just my experience working in National Landing, we have a lot of construction going on and a lot of the MOT is not followed. I know this group has talked about it a lot. The PAC has talked about it a lot. We've talked about it with the county a lot. I feel like as construction is, progressing, it's getting better. Like Crystal Drive is better, but we're still having trouble with just not following MOT to the T of MOT. And we also have people blocking bike lanes like construction folks. So we're, just let you know the National Landing Bid's on it. We're trying to do move the needle there so we can, so pedestrians and cyclists can feel safe as they travel through the streets and sidewalks.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's see here. Because the next person is Pam Van Hine.
Can you hear me any better with the microphone?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. My computer's dying. Yeah, we have wonderful construction issues in our area. And David pointed out one of the worst projects that we have, or most problematic projects. It's a great project, but it's problematic for all of us while we're living through it for several years, which is the expansion of the ANC. And for me, the worst part of that is what they've done to Southgate Road. And there aren't any real sidewalks anymore. There's no places to safely bike. And it's really problematic to even try to drive through it. There aren't any street lights anymore. And if it rains, it gets muddy and flooding. And so that's really awful. My other concern is, which Jim mentioned, is areas with no sidewalks. And that includes the blocks around my house. And I try to get sidewalks on a couple blocks on my block and another block close to me through complete streets. A few years ago, it didn't go anywhere, and I should probably try again. But we're a fairly quiet area, and people walk in the streets and people play in the streets, but it's not entirely safe. It'd be nice to have sidewalks. That's it.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, and I'm the PAC secretary, recording secretary.
All right. And I believe, I don't see anyone else. I believe, Mary, you may be the last person, except for myself, on this list.
Okay, so my name's Mary Delau, and I'm with Walk Arlington, and I live in Bluemont. And welcome to the new people. That's great that you're with us tonight. So I think my experience with sidewalks is like a love-hate relationship, because I think there are some places where they're beautiful and clearly people have put a lot of thought into it and care. Like, and I'm thinking a lot of spots in Roslyn, Ballston, like Fairfax Drive, in certain parts, it's nice and wide and good curb cuts and everything like that. But then there are other places where it's narrow, not at all even. And I was walking around National Landing a couple days ago doing my test walk, because we're doing a walk with the Vision Zero team on Saturday morning, looking at infrastructure and improvements they've made there. And so it's gorgeous in some spots. But then when you get to South Hayes Street, after you cross 15th in Pentagon City, it's completely like not even. There's all kinds of like, it's just very difficult. And you're thinking about people with disabilities or mobility challenges. And neither side of the street at that point felt great to me. So, and then at the end, there was some kind of weird construction and there was a cone and like nowhere to go. So it just like all of a sudden there's nowhere to walk. So it's like, well, I guess we won't walk on that side of the street. So like things like that crop up. North George Mason Drive in Bluemont is not great at all, particularly in the direction of like Route 50 if you're headed that way. And then also another like street I've noticed is North Stafford in like if you're headed from Fairfax Drive in Boston over to Washington Liberty High School, that's another one that's like narrow, uneven, not a lot of space. And if you're not paying attention, you could trip. So I think we have like good and bad in my experience.
Thanks. Thank you. Hey, and Mary, also, I have you late in the agenda here, and we're going to have a lot of discussions here. You're welcome to join us, or if you'd like to tell us, give us an update about Walk Arlington earlier on in the meeting, that's okay. We could move the agenda around.
Sure, whatever makes sense. Yeah, I'm prepared early too, so.
Okay, well, I may move you up just so if if you wish to leave the meeting, you'll have that opportunity as well. So.
Oh, all right, excellent. Thank you.
Anyway, let's. I guess I'll introduce myself. I sort of did. So I'll call myself the acting chair, because I'm still the acting chair for this group. But I guess and also I should say I'm also the liaison to the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and most recently I am now going to be our liaison, or I guess a member for the Neighborhood Complete Streets Commission. So with that, I guess my experiences with sidewalk conditions. So I agree with most of what folks have said, that there certainly are lots of places where we don't have contiguous sidewalks, or sidewalks are missing and people have to walk in the street, and they're narrow sidewalks. But what I have seen, and I would like to see more of, is the county at some point has gone around and I guess ground down like corners of sidewalks that have heaved upward to kind of make them more contiguous, less problematic for people who are not very good at navigating on uneven surfaces. So I have to say the county has done a good job. I can't say throughout the county. I can speak in the neighborhoods that I guess am more frequent in. But they have done a good job there evening out sidewalks. So I do appreciate those efforts. So.
And
I don't
Eric,
know.
you didn't give your name. So for the benefit of the folks who are not who are new, this is Eric Goodman. He's been a longtime member of the committee and the other committees as well. So he was being very modest and didn't even identify himself.
All right, well, thanks. We've done that. I guess we'll go on to public comment. And I know that Mr. Whitehead spoke a moment or two about a specific issue. I don't know if you want to provide more comment or if you felt that you covered that already.
Thanks, Eric. I'll be really brief. I do want to share a photo. For whatever reason, Teams doesn't seem to like me today. It's not letting me put it in the chat. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick to show a picture of the sidewalk that I mentioned earlier. So if you all will permit me, here I go.
Let's see if I can do that. So if I go to your name, we'll see if I can. Can
you allow me to share?
Okay, I'm going
to allow me to post anything, oddly, but doesn't seem to want to let me
I
share.
can make you an attendee.
I might be able to do that. Let's see if that allows you to share a screen.
It tells me I'm going to have to quit and restart in order to share.
No.
Yeah.
How about sending it to me in an email and I can post it?
Sure, David. Let me try that. If I have your email handy, can you put your email in the chat real quick?
Sure.
And that way I'll.
Yes, it's dpatton@arlingtonva.us. Let me get to the chat.
Or can you add your photo to the chat, just like other folks have?
I am trying to do that, Eric. I wish that was my first inclination, and it doesn't seem to want to let me do that.
Or we're full of suggestions. If you tell me
let me
what side of Clarendon
I will send it, but let me describe it. I've already taken up more time than I really wanted to. That on one side of the street, so we're talking about Clarendon Boulevard, which is a one-way street, right? So it's an eastbound street. Wherever you are on Clarendon Boulevard, if you're driving, you're going eastbound. You don't have any choice. So on the south side of the street, there is a 36-inch sidewalk. It's actually narrower than the one that was shared earlier with the wall. It's 36 inches wide. On the north side, it's 20 feet wide, or at least that's to the setback of the building. And this is the area where the new construction is going to be that's going to cause another choke point across the street. And that's what interests me, is that you can't expect people with this old construction on the south side where the sidewalk is 36 inches.
I might be able to share. Hold on.
Well, Eric, I'm gonna put it up on my screen and share the screen.
Okay. I also have the part of the site plan, but.
Oh, fantastic. Well, the site plan, apparently the numbers that are in the site plan are incorrect for what that's worth. I did some measuring and found out that it doesn't quite work the way they necessarily want it to.
Okay.
Hold on a minute here. Let me see if I can't get this. Okay, so I am sending this now to David. That is sent. And maybe David will be able to either put it in the chat or we can go from there. Perhaps. What do you think, David? Were you able to get it?
Bear with me just 1 minute. I kicked myself out of this meeting, so I'll be right back. Here we are. We're looking at Il Radicchio on this side.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And your place on the other side.
The neighborhood never looked so good. That's fantastic. So go up the street, go against a traffic to a little bit further, keep going, a little bit further. Okay, there. Now you'll look on the left-hand side of your screen. You'll see the 36-inch sidewalk. And you see how that's a choke point right there, right?
Right.
You're going from a nice wide sidewalk, which is in front of my residence, which is almost 20 feet wide. That's a nice sidewalk. That's a good sidewalk there. Nice sidewalk. Now you've got a choke point where not only is it cut in half, but the part that's actually paved is a little bit, just a shade over 3 feet wide.
Right.
There. Okay. Now look at the other side of the street. And this is the side that carries the pedestrian traffic for obvious reasons.
Right.
Right? You've got lots of nice big walkable sidewalk and everything is great. Now, if you'll pan even further to the right, this is great. I love this tool. You can see this is the area where the construction is going to be. This is where and because of the way the building is set up, they want to have 4 units right there by where the white car is that front onto the street. They call them loft apartment units with entrances directly onto the street. And as a result of that, they have stoops that will come down from that will narrow the sidewalk. Now you'll notice you can see there where the entrance to the NSTA garage is, that limits their construction size. They're actually going to maintain that. As a result, the long and the short of this is the sidewalk is going to be very narrow on the other side of the street. So the nice walkable sidewalk will come down Clarendon Boulevard because that's the side that people walk on. You can see even in your image, that's the side where the people are. And there's going to be a choke point right at that driveway where folks are not going to be able to continue their nice pedestrian experience down the rest of the street for the balance of the block. That's pretty much it.
Thanks. Can I share something here, David?
You bet. Let me
All right.
let me stop sharing and you can take the
Okay.
screen, Eric.
All right, I'm going to see if I can do this. So I believe this is the, if folks can see this is the sidewalk right here, and there are stoops. I only see 3 of them on this site plan, so it may not have been fully up to date, but there are three stoops, and you can see there's an 8-foot measured space between the planting strip, and I guess what the top of the sidewalk, the north top of the sidewalk, and the wall for these stoops, I guess, continue into that sidewalk, and it's hard to say what the actual measurement is of that wall, if it takes a foot or 2 feet out of it, but it does take a chunk out of that 8-foot sidewalk. So the actual sidewalk could be as narrow as 6 feet potentially there.
Correct, sir. And also, so I questioned the builders at the planning commission meeting. Those stoops are actually less than 3 feet wide. They're also very narrow, almost impractically so. If you can imagine going to the top of those steps and then having to make a 90-degree turn and say you're carrying furniture or something like that, getting in and out of those residences, if those steps are in fact 36 inches wide, is going to be fairly difficult. And so I questioned their measurements all around. And the other stoop is, you're right, it's very hard to see. It is there further to the left. The 4th one is kind of hidden in there. You can see it's recessed a little bit, so it's not so bad. Yes, right there where your arrow is, exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not too bad. And they have a planter that comes out a little bit, but it's really those 3 stoops that you've highlighted that are the choke points on that sidewalk.
Now sorry to interrupt you, but I believe I listened to that first meeting. That was the LPRC meeting. And you and I believe a few of your neighbors were there in person and spoke during that. But I believe that was part of the, a different part of the transportation part, I think, is coming up in the SPRC. That's this coming Monday. But I believe, that was pretty much laid out to them. I thought, and again, I don't have the specifics of the I guess the minutes of the meeting, but it seemed to me like they were going to look at ways to reduce that a little bit. I don't know what that means, if that means that they're going to move the wall of their building in a little bit to accommodate that, or what they're going to do. But I believe they said that they were going to revisit that. So
thank you, Eric. I'm hopeful that is in fact the case. you know, I look at other buildings that are going up, like the building we call the Wendy's building up at Courthouse on the corner where the Wendy's and the Wells Fargo Bank used to be. That building has a significant overhang that permits a wider sidewalk. If you look at the ground floor layout of that, there's about a 4 foot, you get an extra 4 feet of sidewalk because they've gone with an overhang above the ground floor. And I think that's wonderful. And if there was any way that these folks could possibly accommodate that type of a solution, I understand that those ground floor units are restricted by the entrance to the garage. I'm very happy that they're keeping the current garage and that they're not going to, you know, that goes into another topic. I won't go there, but you know, it is a design constraint for them having that garage entrance where it is and being immovable. I still think that there are engineering ways around this problem, as you've suggested, and hopefully as they will start recommending. I'm just inclined to believe that without a little pressure, they're going to think the problem goes away and they'll make it go away once they start building, kind of thing.
Well, I would encourage you to attend that next SPRC meeting next week. We're still trying to figure out who might attend. I was planning to, but I also have a conflict, so I may end up still attending. But I think, you know, as for public comment, I believe you have the opportunity to do that. I think I think we're invited as a committee also to make some comments as well. So I would say hopefully they'll get the message. One thing I noticed is you weren't the only one in the meeting. There were several commissioners in the meeting that also seemed to feel the same way. So hopefully that will take it far enough to understand that we really don't want the sidewalk constrained.
Agreed, sir. You know, the practical aspect of this being a one-way street is that a lot of people traverse this going against the grain of traffic, which is fine. That's one of the beautiful things about sidewalks, right? Having this choke point on there, really, when you think about people with strollers and scooters and the other things that in reality we find on our sidewalks very often, even bicycles going against the grain of traffic, it's avoidable at this point simply by making a nice accommodating sidewalk, as the adjacent building has done a very good job of doing. Folks, listen, I've spoken much longer than I intended to, and I also unfortunately need to depart. So I'm very grateful for your attention and for your consideration of this issue. It's wonderful. Thank you for inviting me. And I will definitely be at next Monday's planning meeting, and we'll speak during the public comment. I believe I get 2 minutes as a public comment. Is that right? There's a timer?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay, well, see, that's what I need. I need a timer to shut me up. It works really well that way.
All right. Well, thank you for
folks.
coming. I see I see that Austin also has I believe his hand up. If you'd like I don't know if you want to add to this or if you have additional comment.
I have a separate item that I'd like to bring up, kind of a rose and a thorn, if you will, to not just only have negativity in here. I'm gonna put 2 more pictures into the meeting chat for people to look at here.
Okay.
And this is another example that's familiar to me, but it's only for illustrative purposes. Something that I think the county has done really well in some places and not so great in others is crossing safety. You can see this top image has.
I can present them if you'd like. I can pull them up, I think, and do that. Give me a chance here. 1 second. Let me stop sharing this one, and I'll see if I can share this other one here. Well, I'm not sure I can.
You might not be able to share the meeting window.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can bring it up as a separate in a separate window. So
that's all right. Really, the point I just want to make is the bottom picture here on Clarendon Boulevard, very close to where the top picture is from, actually, shows a great example of curb extensions, a little bit of daylighting with that bigger curb there separating the parking for a good distance from the crossing. When I'm crossing here, even though there's no, RFFBs or anything, I feel totally safe because it's a really short distance to cross. The drivers have, plenty of time to see, and their sightline is not obscured. On the other hand, this intersection that I'm using here, Rhodes and 16th Street, has really long crossing distances. Even though there are technically no parking signs in what is the parking lane right up to the intersection, people sometimes still park there. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. And so what you have is sometimes you need to step out practically into traffic before drivers in the road have a chance to see you. And I think that Arlington could really bump up the safety of a lot of its intersections by doing some cheaper, quick build improvements with flex posts to bump out the curbs, shorten those crossing distances, really enforce no parking right up to the intersections with some flex posts or something to increase the safety for people crossing.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe the traffic engineering folks have presented sometimes to us utilizing those that type of thing, that they may initially put in flex posts, see how things work with traffic, and then later look for funding to be able to bring out the curb extensions in the future. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, thank you for the time.
All right. Well, I guess unless anybody has any other public comment, we're running a little behind. Let's, I guess, move on. What I'm going to do, I think before I get into the discussion, Mary, I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about any efforts that are going on right now with Walk Arlington.
Excellent. Well, thank you. So yeah, I'll just go out of order. So really just some updates on walks. It's April, so it's walking month. So we've had 2 walks already this month, and we have 1 more on Saturday. And I can't emphasize enough how much I enjoy these. And the first 2 were partnerships, and they helped us reach new audiences. So the first walk was with Alexandria Celebrates Women, and they both approached us and asked if we want to partner. So it was a walk, started in Alexandria, passed through Arlington, ended up in DC, and we had a great group. We had a lot of Arlington people come out for this walk. So that was fantastic. Then we did a tulip walk also over the weekend on Sunday with Friends of the Mount Vernon Trail and the Roslyn Bid. That was in the Washington Post weekend section twice. Beautiful day, big group. And I don't even know how many people we had, but we walked through Roslyn. I think it was about 35 I counted in one of the pictures we took. But anyway, a large number of the people on the walk had never heard of Walk Arlington or knew who we were. So they clearly read about it or knew the Friends of the Mount Vernon Trail, and that prompted them to attend. So that was really great. And then on Saturday, we are doing our walk with the Vision Zero team with Christine Baker in National Landing. And we did the same walk last year in the spring, and this year Christine is coming, and I think she's bringing 3 members of her team to talk to people on the route, and that is full. And we have a waiting list, and Pam is coming as a helper, a walk marshal, which I appreciate. So I'm really excited about that. It just feels like a lot of good stuff going on. And I can put a link to the walk in the chat. And if anybody wants to come, I can certainly just, obviously you can come, and I'll just add you to the list. But yeah, that's going to be really good.
What time is that at?
It's 10 o'clock. Saturday morning, 10 to 11:30, and we meet outside at the Crystal City Metro. but they've put a lot of work into it, and they did a really good handout that has all QR codes for different projects that they're working on. So it'll be a great walk, I think. And I love partnering with them. We've done like a few walks and they're always good. And then the other fun thing is that the county board is going to read a proclamation at the April meeting that it's National Walking Month or Walking Month or walking. Yeah, April is Walking Month. So it's a little late in April, but we put in the request and it got through. So we're hoping to have April as Walk Month and May as Bike Month. So yeah, they're my main updates, but I'll just put this in the chat, and if anybody wants to come, even though it says you'll get on the wait list, but obviously I know who everyone is, and I'll just like let you in. So that's
Friend
pretty much
of
my
the
report.
band.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's great to have something out there, being hands-on with Vision Zero folks.
Yeah, and they do a great job, and they're always like excited to do it. So it's a good partnership.
All right. Anything else, or?
No, those were my main highlights.
All right. All right. I'm going to bring the agenda back up here. Give me just a second here. And we'll move on to the next item. So, all right, give me just one sec here. All right. So what I want to talk about in January, we sort of put out there, let's figure out what our PAC priorities are going to be in 2024. So the suggestions that were made are listed below. And what I'd like to do, in part, because this meeting didn't, I guess we didn't really have a lot of guests coming to the meeting. We were a little bit short on agenda items, but it also, I think, gives us an opportunity to maybe do some internal discussion about things. So since we generated this list, this is probably a good time, a little more than a quarter of the way through the year, to kind of look at it and maybe figure out when we can add some of these things to future agendas and just get an idea about sort of moving forward with these. So I'm just going to go down them one by one, and hopefully we'll get some discussion on them. So, well, I guess we'll start with the first one, which I think we've already done, and that not to say that this is going away, but the issues on Route 1, our last meeting, we actually had a walk and a meeting with Route 1 folks about the status of their multimodal improvements. So I think I would say it's one item that we completed here. I would hope throughout the year we'll get more updates or more information, but I believe we've at least accomplished the first part of that. So I think that's good. The backpack meeting with staff about MOT challenges. I'm going to go a little bit past this one now. I think maybe David, a little later in the meeting, we'll discuss when that's going to occur. There's been a little bit of discussion, but let's kind of move down the list here. But we will revisit that before the end of the meeting here. So next item is active transportation for APS students. So I'm not even sure who particularly brought that item up, but it would be good to, and I'll start the discussion now, and hopefully we'll get some other hands coming up. It would be good to meet with, and it is kind of lower on our list here that we want to meet with someone from APS. It would be good to talk to APS or a representative from APS on what they're doing with active transportation with students. And It's too bad Andrea isn't here, because I know Andrea also has worked as a volunteer with APS. I believe doing some maybe like walking groups or walking trains
Walking
to
school
school.
bus.
Walking school bus, sorry.
Yes.
So so anyway, I think it would be nice to arrange, at least in my opinion, to arrange a meeting with someone who could represent APS and kind of tell us a little bit about what they're doing, and also how we can partner with them as well, to kind of to start early for Arlingtonians, to have a focus on active transportation. So. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I have, Eric. I'm going to chime in like a peanut gallery on a few of these things. This is one that I think has long sort of been deficient. I think it's important for folks to realize that county government and staff where I work is really fully separate from schools staff and their own board and their own executive leadership. But we need to bridge that gap. And there have been various attempts over time. And I think Patrick Kinney, I think, has had some experience with that. There was a committee for a while that was trying to help bridge that with a TDM, a Transportation Demand Management Program. And right now it's not great. There's not a, and I don't want people to think that I'm all down on this. I start off with a really bad sidewalk example. I'm happy to work for Arlington. I think we're doing a lot of really good stuff, but this is not a strong point for us right now. We don't have a good, strong connection between county government transportation staff where I am and the school side of things. So we can work on that. I spoke with my close colleague, Brian Shelton, yesterday, who's been discussing bicycle business with Kevin Treacle at the school district. So I think we can work on this. We can improve this.
Okay. Well, it would be good to get a representative, and if Kevin is not the right representative, if his, I guess, depending on what his abilities are, maybe somebody else a little bit higher up the chain might be an appropriate person to
Maybe so.
to talk with. But yeah, I think that would definitely be good. I know Patrick was for a little while, and I guess I was as well, on that committee that really included county staff, and actually, and even had someone from the county board who attended them, and teachers and students and a variety of folks. It's kind of sad that disappeared. But it would be nice to know what they have in the works as well. So, and even what they're doing with regard to Vision Zero. Does Vision Zero even have a tie-in with them as well? So,
good question.
So I think if you can help us get somebody this year to come and kind of talk about where things are with APS, the public schools, that would be great.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. So let's see, let's go down the next item on here. So this was updating the pedestrian element and how important current pedestrian guidelines are for the SPRC process. So I'm not sure if that was one that Pam had put in at the time, but I think a discussion about that would be good. I think as one of the items that is further down on our list, and I'll just kind of go down here, is really also to have somebody, talk to us, maybe from Planning Commission or the county's staff person for Planning Commission, to maybe talk a little bit about, explain SPRCs and maybe what our role and the other participants' roles are in that process.
So Eric, if you wouldn't mind scrolling back up to your point on your list here, I have something to say about sort of both pieces of this. One, and I'm not trying to foreclose anything, but about the pedestrian element in particular, my thought is that a separate freestanding pedestrian element is going to go away. It's not going to, there's a new master transportation plan effort beginning. And it's still a little secretive, if you ask me. It's sequestered. They're in contract negotiations to hire somebody to help write it. I think they're getting close, but it's sort of embargoed. We can't talk much about it. But the overall approach will be an integrated, multimodal, far-reaching master transportation plan without separate elements as the last one had. So the promise is that everything will be all very well blended together, but still plenty of work to do to input good ideas about pedestrian activity, the pedestrian realm, pedestrian experience.
I hope, and I'll just, sorry to kind of,
Right.
in my opinion, I hope if they're not separated, that they aren't so mixed that that when we look at our role to advise the county manager,
Right.
that we're not so far into the soup that it's kind of hard to tell what where our efforts begin and end.
I agree. And I've brought this up repeatedly in the realm where I work. And what I hear back repeatedly is that the aim of this transportation plan will be to stand the current status quo on its head and prioritize pedestrian safety, prioritize active transportation, and not make them appendices to moving cars around. Now, that's the approach, that's the promise. Let's see how it plays out. So this is going to be a couple of year-long process, but there will be plenty of engagement opportunities. I've been asking repeatedly for someone to come and present that strategy, if you will, to this committee. And I've just been told repeatedly, not yet, not quite yet,
Okay.
but keep your eyes peeled for that. And on the other piece of your question there, that sort of the third or fourth bullet about the SPRC, I'm kind of in the dark about the SPRC process. I've never been part of it. So what you say below about asking someone, and Pam and others on the committee, and I think John Armstrong and Eric yourself are very well steeped in the SPRC process. I'm not. Let's hear about that. So as Mr. Whitehead brought up, what happens with something like a specification or a guideline in a sector plan for a sidewalk width? Does it just get eroded without any resistance when a developer comes through, or is there somebody stand up and say, no, you can't do that?
And maybe even to take it a step further, if we attend these meetings, what, I guess, maybe influence isn't the right word, but maybe if we attend them, how are the suggestions that we make, how are they utilized or implemented? So I think it would be good to understand that a little bit as well.
Pam, will you please remind me of the name of the fellow who manages the groups for SPRC?
Last name is Pfeiffer.
Matt Pfeiffer.
Matt Pfeiffer, yeah. Nice guy.
Thank you.
And my experience, and I'm certainly one of the people who's been pushing to update the pedestrian element because it was done several years ago. And for an example,
15.
Well, I think a lot of it's older than that. We haven't done anything major since I've been involved with the PAC, and I started in 2014.
I'm saying 15 years ago. It was adopted in 2008 or 9.
Yeah. Right. And actually, something was done in 2011. But when you talk about sidewalk widths, even for commercial areas, it's the only number they have is 6 feet. It encourages wider, but that doesn't help us when we're in the SPRC to push for wider ones. And I certainly feel for so many places where there's major development, we need 8-foot, 10-foot, or wider sidewalks. But I have a hard time justifying that unless there is a sector plan for the area that specifies wider sidewalk widths. And there are some places where there are no sector plans, which is the issue we're dealing with Melwood. And there's some places like some of the Crystal City ones, some of the widths in the sector plan are good. Some of them are not so good. So it's a constant struggle that we have to push and try to justify as much as we can. And, you know, it's some of the commissions like C2E2, they have new guidelines. Forestry Natural Resources has new documents, and they have stronger guidelines. And we can't point to things that are in guidelines that are helpful. So I was hoping that we would really have the opportunity to do a formal update of what's in the pedestrian element. And if we can't, I want to absolutely ensure that we have a very active role in the broader master transportation plan, that they work with us closely to get what we need in there.
So once again,
And I know what they want. Yeah, I know.
I'm not entirely comfortable being put in the position of a cheerleader, but this is where I am right now. I've brought this up repeatedly inside the silo where I work, and I'm being told there will be plenty of opportunity to put all these kinds of thoughts into the mix. Just don't look for a separate pedestrian element. It'll be baked in. Now, take that with a grain of salt, take it with a lump of salt if you want.
Yeah,
but that's the line that I'm being told.
Let me ask this question just to get ahead of this, and please look for others to participate in this discussion as well. Would it make sense for us to write a letter to the county manager, or basically saying, we understand that this is in development. Historically we've had a pedestrian element. We understand, we've heard little bits about this sort of disappearing, and it's all going to be integrated, and just kind of maybe ask the question of the manager. We'd like to understand the process, understand how we will be represented in the process.
I'd offer a friendly amendment to what you just suggested. Yes, write to the manager, but preface it by saying, as your advisors, we would recommend that you highlight the role of the pedestrian experience in the county's transportation planning document, which is about to be rewritten, and copy my supervisors, Valerie Mosley, Allison Bullock, Wei Wong, Sarah Crawford, all the whole chain of command, right up to Greg Emanuel and right up to the manager, so that they know that you all have your eyes on the ball.
Okay. How do others feel about sending something to the county manager? Should we take? Is this something we should take to a vote this evening? Any thoughts?
Not that we have a quorum, but I think we can agree to write the letter.
Okay.
We don't need to vote on that.
And maybe don't make it quite as strident as I just was, but this is. I'm going to shut up.
Okay.
Oh,
but
no.
I think it might not be a bad idea to get in front of this, right. and not put you in the, like you said, in the position of trying to kind of push from inside with your supervisory chain.
Yes, it would help me, Eric. You just put your finger on it, because I've been telling the people I work with, the pedestrian committee, I think the bicycle committee too, wants to know where things are. This has been a year probably since they announced the effort to start a new master transportation plan. I said, will you please come and explain to the pedestrian committee how this is going to work for the things they're interested in? Oh, well, it's going to be baked in. Well, things been in the oven for a year, so there should be something to announce by now.
All right. Well, I will get started on this ask. Is there anybody else who'd like to participate in putting something together with me?
I suppose I have to, given the topic.
Okay. Well, we will do that.
Yeah.
Should we continue down the list
Yeah,
here?
and John or Jim may have some ideas too. Yeah. they both
Okay.
done it.
Okay. Should we continue down the list here?
Sure.
So I did not write this one, but I do see this was one that was added. It was painting lines on the street to keep drivers in, I guess, on the correct side of the road. So I don't know.
I think that was Tom.
Okay, so potentially in some places we have issues with drivers. I know Tom lives on a street where we made some interesting changes there. We created the chicane, I guess, where they alternated parking on both sides of the street to kind of, so maybe he is potentially referring to that in some ways.
When I read that, it looks like that fits with the tactical urbanism topic, a couple of bullets down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does
I think so.
anybody else want to chime in on this one before I go on to the next one? All right, I'll go on to the next one. Keeping pedestrians safe and visible in the dark, role of individuals to wear reflective and light materials, better street and intersection lights. There's a lot in this topic here, and infrastructure design, better driver education and enforcement. A lot of these are they're multiple things, but I think they all sort of come back to the same thing. Counties should give out lights and reflective materials to help bike and bike peds to be visible. And I believe Mary can attest to there is some of that has been done. So and then the PAC needs a presentation from perhaps on the streetlight from the streetlight team and for the Vision Zero staff. So I actually kind of agree with some of this. There's a lot to sort of take in with this statement, but I think that I do agree that part of public education, and some people may find this controversial that I believe this, but I think that everybody has a responsibility when you're sort of walking down the street. People should try to be visible, both through potentially what they're wearing, but the infrastructure, the lighting, other things like that, ways to make people visible. So people in cars will notice them and potentially have fewer conflicts. So I think that I see responsibility on all sides on this. So I'm not exactly sure where we might go with this, but I do think that maybe a little bit of this could be public education. I do notice at times walking on the street there are a lot of people that are hard to see, even as a pedestrian walking from the metro from one place to another. Dark clothes can be very trendy, but they don't work very well in the dark. So I'm not sure where we go with this, but I think it is a topic I'd like to see maybe further discussion on.
Yeah.
Go.
I agree.
David, do you have a comment?
Well, yes, remember, I'm the peanut gallery here. This is sort of like spring cleaning, if you will. These are things that have been percolating for a while, and I agree that these are all up for discussion. I think we could hear from the streetlight team. I think that's a request I could make. There's a small group of my engineering colleagues who take care of all the streetlights. Not all the streetlights, because some of them belong to Dominion, some belong to VDOT, some belong to Parks, but a lot of them belong to the county and they manage. And Vision Zero. We haven't heard from the Vision Zero folks for quite a while. Laura Castro and Christine were with us 6 months ago, maybe. Well, so I think we could hear from them, get an update from them. Yep. They have their own feed of reports that they put out, but
maybe it would be good to, how about, let me kind of throw out a way to potentially do this. It may take a bit of work,
right.
but maybe we could do a little bit of a forum. Essentially have Vision Zero and maybe the lighting team also have Mary from Walk Arlington and maybe sort of talk about this topic about visibility and kind of hear from several people. Does that sound like that might be an interesting thing to do for a meeting?
Yeah, we could talk about that. And I want to reach back and mention driver education. Driver education is managed by DMV, and they have a relationship with the State Department of Education because there's still driver education happening in the schools. And the process of developing those, what do you call them, programs, is pretty locked up. It's hard to get a look into that. But I had a call a few months ago from I think a new commissioner. Well, when the new governor came in, there was a new commissioner of the DMV, and he wanted to look at pedestrian safety. I wasn't given any time, but they called me up out of the blue. I was astonished that I was getting a call from the state DMV if there was anything that we might want to propose for them to pay attention to as they develop new driver education materials. So there's some sort of an opening there to be explored. So what you just suggested as a forum to develop an idea, to propose some educational undertakings, whether it's the county's TV channel or feeding up to the state DMV something, yes. And the streetlight folks, I think, could be asked to come to a PAC meeting.
Okay. I'd like to get maybe, oh, I see Pam, you have your hand up.
Yeah. I think this is all great, and I'd like to suggest specifically including the back as well. It's a big issue for cyclists as well as pedestrians, and it's the same controversies for cyclists as we have as pedestrians. What kind of obligation do we have to be appropriately attired and have our own personal lights and stuff versus just being demanding that there's more street lights and that drivers are better behaved. But I think they're a good player. You could also, if we're thinking of a real forum, you could also include the Transit Advisory Committee for transit riders as well, and of course the DAC, Disability Advisory Committee.
Okay, well, maybe I know that one of the things, and I was going to mention this, we were approached about updating our charter, and one of the things they talk about is having a combined meeting at one point. Maybe we're throwing too much in there, but it might be good to have that combined meeting with a topic and maybe having a forum for at least half the meeting. So.
Yep, it's worth exploring.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, that's something we'd have to start planning on early, but I think that would be potentially a good one. I haven't heard from very many other folks. So do others have opinions they'd like to share?
I'll speak to the last topic.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Well, I think I may be mistaken, but I think Andrea is her term on the Commission on Aging is expiring, and I think that if the Pedestrian Advisory Committee asked for a few minutes of time at a meeting of the Commission on Aging to recruit a member, a formal voting member from the commission to the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, I think you get a success. I've said it more than once, but I have never seen any issue by this committee that was not advocated by the Commission on Aging or vice versa when it comes to safety walking and sidewalks. It's a natural union of interests. And I think that's probably true of the Disability Advisory Commission also. I know less about
Right.
them. But I think that we should have a member from the Commission on Aging as a permanent voting member on this committee.
Okay. Well, I
Right.
think, but the Commission on Aging is and I guess this is where we kind of separate a little bit. The Commission on Aging as well as the Disability Advisory Commission are commissions to the county board, right? As
Correct.
opposed to the county
Yes.
manager.
That's right.
But yeah, I think I certainly would like representatives from both of those groups. So, and that kind of goes into the last two, which we sort of talked about again, Vision Zero, or at least getting an update from Vision Zero, and also partnering with these other groups. So I think maybe one of the ambitious things that we can do is try to get a meeting together that might pull together a lot of this and the lighting issue that we just talked about. So.
Yep.
Any further discussion before we move on? All right, well, I think we're already at like 8:15, so I think we at least kind of went through the list here. David, and I think taking that we want to pull a few of these meetings together, I think I should sit down with you offline to talk about when we can get these meetings or get I guess speakers for these meetings.
I agree. Some of them should be straightforward. Others are a little more ambitious, require a little more planning. But good to work through that. One
other thing, let's see, if we go down to the bottom of our list here, did we cover just about everything? I think we also mentioned TE&O representative to still talk about the new MUTCD, the new, and for folks that don't know what MUTCD is, I'll try and muddle through that. So that's the Uniform Traffic Signals or traffic design manual, right?
Manual of uniform traffic control devices.
Okay.
Everything from signs and stripes and pavement markings to signals and flashing beacons and the whole business. And I think TE&O is willing to do that. I think it makes sense to do that at a joint meeting with PAC and BAC. This is a thick, fat technical volume that gets rewritten every few years. I think the last one might have been 2012, maybe the last thorough revision. So there's a new edition out, and they're eager to share. It's making the rounds. The changes in the new one are making the rounds and drawing people's attention. So I saw somebody wants to talk. That's fine.
Well, John Armstrong is just joining us.
Okay.
So
yay, John.
You'd mentioned that he would be on a little bit later. Welcome.
Sorry.
So we were just talking about, and if you can see up on here, we've just have sort of gone through this list of PAC suggestions that were made at our January meeting, talking about them. Just to give you a real quick highlight, we're looking at potentially doing a joint meeting with multiple committees to talk about sort of pedestrian and bicycle visibility, and potentially have someone from Vision Zero, someone maybe from lighting, and potentially create like a little forum there to discuss this. So and kind of part of that would be the discussion about responsibility as a active transportation person to make yourself be seen, and then the other side of the coin is through engineering and other things, how can you increase visibility? So I think that's part of a discussion that we're talking about having. So just to get you up to speed.
Thank you.
So, and I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to this, but we're looking at planning some future meetings throughout the year. So,
Okay.
and we do, go ahead.
No, just so you asked me if I wanted something to add to the okay. These are suggestions for the Route 1.
These came out, and these were suggestions that were made back in January. So we're just kind of looking at one of the things this month. We did not have an outside speaker, and one of the things we would like to do, or at least I would like to do, is have more folks visit the committee and provide information about what the county is doing with various things. So so part of this is going to be sort of coming together and sort of getting speakers on future meetings throughout the year.
Yeah, I don't have anyone specific, but I agree. I think it's valuable to have.
Right.
Yes.
One other thing I guess I'll mention before we go on to the next topic is the bicycle committee just a week ago did have a person from the police, the Arlington police, I guess in their special operations unit, come and talk to them. Now, one thing we've been told in recent years is that we wouldn't have the police coming to talk about accidents and things like that as much, because that's now being covered through Vision Zero. So some of that information is now fed out through Vision Zero updates. But at the Bicycle Advisory Committee, like a week or so ago, they had a very specific thing that they talked to the police about, and that was about incursions in bike lanes. And there are lots of situations where bike lanes are blocked by vehicles, and then the safety issue associated with having to leave the bike lane and return to it in traffic. So we should think about, is there a topic, if we would invite someone from special operations to come to speak to us, is there a specific topic, other than sort of accident information, or I wouldn't even say accident, crashes is the right word for it, but crash information that we might have them speak to us about? And I see, Pam, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I guess my big issues would be red light running, not yielding, especially when drivers are turning.
Okay.
Yeah, speeding.
So we may want to invite them and send them some questions on that specific topic.
Yeah.
So that's good. Okay. So that's another future meeting to invite someone from the police to talk specifically about that issue.
Yeah. And I could put something up in the Google group asking for some specific questions.
Okay.
That might help.
That sounds good.
Since we're missing so many people tonight.
All right, well, let me move on to the next topic. And so it's about 8:25 right now. So spend about 15, 20 minutes on this. I wanted to discuss something that I've noticed, and I just want to get other members' thoughts on this. So I'll go right into this. So I believe that the county's approach, at least in the last few years with public engagement, has really been on a project focus way of dealing with the public, and mainly through putting their projects out there on a project page and looking for public comment through that process, and then often but not always having a one or two public meetings about it. This has sort of deviated from what used to happen, where they would have at least the project manager or someone representing the project coming to our meetings and actually talking about them on projects that had significant components for walking and pedestrian issues. So again, and if you see what Pam has put out, often information about, please comment about this project or one project or another, because the timing for doing that window is closing. So certainly gives individuals in our group an opportunity to do that, and motivated people. There are sort of pluses and minuses I see with that. In one way, it certainly opens it up to a wider variety of folks. Anybody can comment on it. It would be interesting to find out from a public engagement standpoint, are we getting the same several folks that are commenting on projects or not? On the other hand, it's not bringing items to our committee, which I think, part of the reason, the charter, the reason for this committee is to advise the county manager and county staff on pedestrian specific issues, regarding safety and design in those projects. So I just wanted to get folks' thoughts on that. I think that we're sort of being left out a little bit of the process, and I would like to see more project managers come and engage with us. And so just want to get other folks' thoughts. So I'm going to open that up to some discussion here.
Oh, this is Jim. I think you're right. That's a good point. I had not noticed this, but I mean, I hadn't focused on this, but the more, while you were speaking, it did occur to me that I think you're absolutely right. And, but I was wondering how we might have to talk about how we would best insert ourselves into that process. I think it might be more just snuggling up to the individual project managers or something, and it wouldn't seem like it would take that much to add a reference to the Pedestrian Advisory Committee when they're doing a public engagement request for anything that affects something that we're interested in. I don't think that doesn't seem that it would take that much effort, but we just might want to romance the project managers of that. I'm not sure how else we would do that.
You could take them on one of your cruises, Jim.
Yeah. Well, we don't have a lot of pedestrian activity on this.
If I might add a little perspective to this, I agree that Eric has highlighted something that has changed in the last few years. I think part of it's been deliberate on the part of the people at the county who manage public engagement, and part of it's maybe not been noticed. The part that's been deliberate was to institute a formal process for engaging the community. And it has a name, it's got a brand, it's one of these things that's been rolled out, has 6 steps. So for different projects, there's different degrees of seriousness, there's different degrees of engagement that are invoked. And I think that's been working pretty well. What has been sacrificed is sort of the romance, if you will, or the high touch aspect of project managers trooping through committee after committee after committee to introduce their project and solicit input. So it's centralized the activity of public engagement, and it's sort of left this committee and the bike committee and others maybe out of the loop a bit. I think we should hear from the people who manage that overall process. And those are folks that you know, that you have met at different pop-ups or surveys or public meetings. Aaron Potter, Nate Graham, Claudia Pores, Katie O'Brien. Let's hear from them. And I think feed back to them this sense that this committee's input might be being overlooked. I don't think it's deliberate to shut out the pedestrian committee. I just think it hasn't been noticed because a lot of people are still engaging in project comments. But I think we could hear from those folks and ask them to come by for one of our meetings, add it to the list above, and hear how this is going.
Who would you suggest that we invite?
Well, I would suggest Claudia Pores and or Katie O'Brien. There's a team. So the folks that I know the best, who are Nate Graham and Aaron Potter, work with these other folks who sort of set the strategy. Nate and Aaron are really pretty much project-specific engagement specialists. Claudia and Katie O'Brien are communications specialists. And the engagement team works sort of but sort of under the communication team. So I think we should hear from the people who manage the communication team and say, what is this working as you wanted it to work? Are there any tweaks available? And hear how it's going and speak to that.
That sounds good. Let me just ask you. So your just your infrastructure, going up the chain. Do we want to have someone from the communications group and then potentially also someone who represents the group,
the project manager
group to both approach us, because I think that they may take different roles.
You're right. So let me I feel like I'm
I guess
monopolizing the time, but yes, I think that's also correct. And so another aspect that this intentional change of formalizing the way the public was engaged had another aspect to it, and that was to how do I say this? Not slow down the development of projects, because in the past, 6 or 7 years ago, I would regularly hear from my colleague project managers who didn't want to come to the committees because they would have to go to 2 or 3 committees. And every time they went, their project would get slowed down because they would get comments like, oh, that stripe on the road shouldn't be 4 inches wide, it should be 6 inches wide. So then they had to go back to the engineers to redesign it, and it took forever to get anything built. So that was an intentional aspect of formalizing this kind of public engagement system that we now have. But it could very well be that there have been opportunities lost for meaningful comments that might have made a better project, not just a slower project. So I think it would be fair to bring somebody from the project management side as well.
And it may also make sense, just throwing this out, to engage us early in the process, because I know a lot of times when we have been engaged late, they're really, like you said, you're sort of splitting hairs on some of these things, and they're way deep in where it's hard to make any changes, and to do those changes slows the whole project down.
Right. And there's a fine line. So now let me advocate on behalf of my colleagues who are project managers, who are trained engineers, they're trained planners, they're trained landscape architects. And these are professional people who are senior in their careers. They've been doing this 10, 15, 20 years. Maybe they don't want to come to meetings and talk to people who don't really know the technicalities. So there's a balance there. There's a balance between opening up your project to scrutiny and public comment, and not getting bogged down in technical details that the layperson is not informed about, that is guided by guidelines or regulations or certificates or etc. But I think we can have that discussion. Let's have the discussion and say, let's take a reading about how public engagement and commenting on projects is going. This new formal process has been in place for 3 or 4 years now. Let's hear from the committee about it.
Sounds good. All right. Well, that will be potentially another meeting for us to have. I don't know that we need to have a joint meeting for all of these, but
No.
certainly I think we should. I think it would be good to have that meeting to talk about how we, as volunteers, how we can effectively help with the process. Because again, I think one thing we don't know, and are they hearing from the same 3 or 4 folks all the time, or are they getting a wide variety of comments from around the county?
Again, I apologize if I'm taking too much time, but on that point, some of the tools, if you will, that are in place now are generating a lot of comments. So I hear from Aaron and Nate regularly, and they have these online tools, and these apps, and these, they don't call them surveys anymore, they call them public input forms. They're getting hundreds of responses. One that I know about that's very close to home is my close colleague, Elwin Gonzalez, who's managing a project to study deficiencies in the Custis Trail. They've had 1,000 comments. So those are not the same people that we hear from all the time about, an intersection treatment. So some of this stuff is really working, and it's different from what we're used to. It's not the kind of 3 posters on an easel kind of public meeting that we've had. It's new stuff, and some of it's working very well, and I think they're very happy with the kind of engagement level feedback that they're getting.
Very good. Well, I see Pam has her hand up and has been very patient. So Pam,
It was
please.
not that long. Interesting, David's comment about the 3 posters on an easel. I recently was at a county session that had about 3 posters on an easel. It's disappointing. The bridge redevelopment in our neighborhood.
The Mount Vernon Avenue Bridge?
Yeah. There was not too much to the meeting, unfortunately. My suggestion as we are putting this together is to think about some of the projects recently where we wish we had input, and how our input would have improved it, enhanced it, and just in general the value of having one-on-one engagement or group engagement. That the more people you have together working on something, your comments feed on each other and develop, and hopefully it's not, oh, this is just too narrow or whatever, but you can really come to some useful suggestions for them. And so, but I think we can't just say, oh, boo-hoo, you're not coming to us. That we should really have some concrete examples of things that would have been worthwhile and how we would have enhanced it.
Good.
I think that sounds good. I think, though, also to have more engagement in our meetings may draw more people to come to our meetings as well. So.
Yep, definitely.
All right. Anybody else would like to comment on this?
I'd just like to say real quickly that, before I was made aware of all of these different advisory committees, that sort of public input form is how I was able to interface with the county, and I really see it as a positive thing, reaching a lot more people.
And I'm not asking the county to dispense with that in any way. I'm just asking that that there would be an opportunity to come to a group of volunteers that have historically worked with county folks on these sort of projects and issues. So
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
I
instead
think
of,
the
but
type of
in
feedback
addition
you
to.
get
Yes.
is different from this, committee versus, the broad public. And I think both are valuable in their own way.
Right.
All right. Well, David, that's another one for us to work on. So we have we're getting a long list of items to pull together for future meetings. So
That's
we
fine.
can, and that way we should at least allow ourselves a couple months to schedule people.
Yes.
So we'll start out early with that. I didn't have anything more on this topic. I know Mary spoke. David, do you have anything you'd like to update on us on, since we're at that point in the meeting?
I do have. I've made notes on the agenda. I could go on and on and on. I don't want to do that. If I might skip ahead to your next bullet there, the PAC business, I have
Mhm.
something that we need to talk about.
Okay,
And then I'll come back to my update about county projects that I'm involved in.
sure. Go ahead.
So under PAC business, we have minutes approval, we have other business. This is other business. And we've brushed on this, but at a meeting like this, it's kind of important when we don't have enough people to have a quorum. We have people on our official roster of members who aren't coming to meetings and who have sort of just faded away, and we sort of need to solidify their status. And I guess it's up to me to do that. And to name names, I'm thinking of Lizzie Gallagher and Chris Yari and Eric Goldstein. We haven't seen these people for months and months and months. And I believe Chris is moving or has moved out of the area. Lizzie just faded away. She answered the last email I sent several months ago. I don't know about Eric Goldstein. He popped up in a meeting a few months ago. Should we write to these folks and say, have you decided to what is it, resign? I mean, these are official positions that are nominated by the county managers. There's a little bit of gravity here. It's not just, come when you want. So there's some formality involved. I don't want to overblow it, but I think we should find out if these people with us or not.
Right.
Because it affects things like quorums and votes and charters and stuff like that.
Right, absolutely. I mean, you're right. If we have a portion of our members that aren't showing up, then it changes the number of folks that make up a quorum. So I think we want to at least get down to the folks that want to be participants and members of this committee. So yes, I agree.
So is it me? I mean, I could write a letter to these people. I have
let's work together on this. I'll work with writing something. We'll do that. We'll do that together.
Okay, great. So now back to just a quick breeze through of updates of things that we haven't yet talked about. So this is county updates. These are things that I'm directly involved with that I think bear on the committee's interests. So one is the CC to DCA bridge. I'm part of the county's team on that. We have an engineering firm called VHB that's helping us. They've been great. We had a meeting today with MWA, the airport people, and WMATA, the metro people, about where this bridge is going to land when it gets to the airport. It was a very productive meeting, and learned that the MWA people, the airport people, have finally identified the firm they're going to use to design their roadway network, which we need to know to design our bridge. So that happened today. That was a real breakthrough, and they're giving all the signs of wanting to cooperate very well with us. So that's very positive news on that. Big project, and anyway, you all know about it. Columbia Pike, I went on a walking tour of Columbia Pike with my colleagues yesterday. Talk about a street that's torn up. Talk about a street that's been torn up as long as I've worked for the county and has many more years ahead of it of being torn up. We walked from Oakland Street to Wakefield, and there's some great stuff happening. Brand new sidewalks, wide sidewalks, some places where there's going to be intense development. What's that place called? On the south side of the Pike, around west of George Mason, George the Bee. They're going to take down a bunch of garden style apartments and build 6 and 8 story housing. This is
Barcroft.
form-based. Bancroft. Thank you very much.
Barcroft.
Barcroft. Yes. Thank you very much. So I don't know much about it. My colleagues are all over it. Maybe we should have a presentation about Columbia Pike. It's a very important corridor in the county. It doesn't really have a sector plan. It has something called form-based code, which drives a bunch of the development down there. It was going to get a streetcar, and so everything that's happening now is in the absence of a streetcar, high-density transit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We should maybe want to hear from project managers. Oh, and there's going to be a change. There's a woman named Susan Finati, who's been with the county for 20 plus years. She's about to retire. So Susan's going to go away. She has been all over Columbia Pike for 20 years, and so there will be new people on the watch there. So it'd be a way of informing them with the committee's ideas. Eric, you want to get in?
So I have a question regarding that. At least looking at, as we look through, sort of scrub through the CIP, it looks like the Columbia Pike sort of improvements project is supposed to wind down in the next 2 years or so.
Oh, well, then
is this, are we talking about things other than that effort? Are we talking about other efforts? This sounds like a very specific location that you were talking about.
Well, our tour was limited.
Okay.
But the impact of what's happening on the Pike spills out. For example, there are parallel bike boulevards, because the Columbia Pike itself is not very hospitable for bicycling. So the idea is to go north to 9th Street and south to 12th Street and enhance facilities for bicycling parallel to the Pike, but only a block away. So it's a whole corridor that doesn't really have the same kind of attention that Rosslyn Ballston has, or, well, it gets, anyway. Columbia Pike's a whole thing. And yes, the multimodal improvements project is set to wind down, but then here comes the cemetery projects down at the East End, which are scrambling things again. And here come big projects like this Barcroft development just off the Pike, which is not the Pike, but pedestrian aspects, sidewalks, density, schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So might be good to get an overview of Columbia Pike update.
That sounds like a good thing. Thanks. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that would be good for a good topic for a meeting to cover a good portion of a meeting.
We're going to have to do some homework and calendar some of these things. On the other end of the spectrum, went out to a very detailed look at a trail connection in Bon Air Park a couple of weeks ago with somebody from the Parks Department. They have some money for trails improvements, so they're going to get rid of some awkward kind of intersections between trails in Bon Air Park. It's going to be nicer, right around just north of Wilson Boulevard in Bon Air Park by the
Rose Garden.
By the Rose Garden, the opposite side of the stream from the Rose Garden. But there's some confusing and not very great, skinny little asphalt trails that are going to be improved there. Mount Vernon Avenue Bridge. I don't know much about it. Pam probably knows a lot more than I do. Have they started construction there?
No, I think they're going to start by the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the design, I think, is basically done. They're using the same for the artistic parts of it. They're using the same artists as they did for the glebe, and it's a beautiful design.
Right.
It's not identical, but same.
And that same woman, Vicky Scurry, did the art for the illuminated overpasses at Courthouse and 50.
Yes, she does beautiful work.
Yeah.
They will always maintain 2 travel lanes, one each direction for vehicles. There will always be at least one side that has a 2-way space for cyclists and pedestrians to share, which is what we've had now. There will eventually be some detours of the Mount Vernon Trail that go under the bridge because they have to do some construction work over that, and there will be well-marked detours. The controversy is how they're going to design the quote unquote sidewalk. They're going to put the cyclists and the pedestrians both on a sidewalk, somewhat similar to what they did with Glebe, but a little bit different. They learned some lessons from that. And in general, the sidewalk on the west side would have higher pedestrian volume because it serves the Arlandria community, and it's a connection for them to get over to the shopping center other side of Glebe, and more cyclists potentially on the east side because it connects to both trails. And some of the cyclists would like the designs to be adjusted a little bit more to accommodate that, and I don't know if that's going to happen. And I use the east side all the time.
That's the side where you live.
Yeah, right.
A couple more quick things. Back to counters. I don't report to you folks about counters very much, but I manage a set of a fleet of counters, bicycle and pedestrian counters. And we had our annual visit from the technician who comes down from Montreal a couple of weeks ago. We visited all the counters that needed help, and everything's working for the time being. The bikeometer is back up at the Custis Trail at Lynn Street on Langston Boulevard. It was down for several months after it got vandalized, and some knucklehead with a sledgehammer did several $1,000s worth of damage. So the bikeometer is back. The pedestrian counters are working. On trails, still, we had a nice meeting with the Nova Parks staff about adding some wayfinding signs to the W&OD Trail in Arlington between Shirlington and Wilson Boulevard. Not a lot, but signs that will help people using that trail to orient themselves to the Arlington County street network, especially bike and ped connections, because of the bike and ped trail. So that was a very positive meeting. We've been sort of, to use Jim's term, we've been romancing them for a couple of years, and they accepted our roses at this last meeting. So they came around very, very nicely. So we're going to be getting some signs. We have to work through the details and arrangements and agreements and all that stuff. And then finally, I hope this is good news to you all. Report a problem. We had these three, to me, they were three similar kinds of constellations of issues. One was MOT, one was report a problem, the other was snow, how the county handles snow. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on snow right now, because we're entering spring and warm weather. But all of those things require a lot of coordination on our side to be able to tell the public how things should work. And on the report a problem issue, Dana Bress was a dog on a bone. He would never give this up. He always wanted to find a way to comment on this, as a smart guy who knows how big computer programs work and stuff. So we brokered a meeting last week between Dana and a woman named Claudia O'Connor, who manages big database stuff inside my department. And it went well, and everybody's happy. And Dana's happy that he finally got to talk to somebody who knows how this system works. And Claudia was happy because she had somebody making meaningful comments and not just, bitching and moaning, but meaningful, informed comments about what doesn't work. And so it went well. And so I think it's going to go well. We'll see. We'll see.
That's
if this
great to
actually
hear. That's great to hear. And Dana Brez is on the bicycle advisory committee. So it's a great, very active member of that committee. So good to hear.
And both our committee, the pedestrian committee and the bike committee have long had issues with how report a problem works or doesn't work. And I think there's a lot of potential to make it better. And I think now some of the key people are talking to each other. So that was that was a win.
So this is a good segue into something else I was going to mention. But before I do that, I just want to thank Austin for joining us. And I would hopefully I'd like to see you come back again. We're always looking for new participants and potentially new members. So I just
and Dr. Whitehead too.
Well, thank
Both
you
of
all
them,
for being
yes.
so welcoming, and
Yes.
I'm sure I will see you at some of the other advisory committee meetings. I'm sure I'll be joining some more in the future.
Great.
Good.
And
Thank you.
and do watch the website as you did to find us tonight, because the next meeting or two might be a little off schedule. We might have be on different nights, or there might be joint meetings or something. So if you want to send me your contact information, I can add you to the notifications.
Oh, wonderful.
And with thank you. And with that, let's talk just for a moment about potentially the next meeting, which or maybe the meeting after. But we're looking at a joint meeting with the Bicycle Advisory Committee to look at the maintenance of transportation or maintenance of traffic. I'm not sure, but the MOT process during construction to be able to maintain getting all modes of transportation through an area of construction. And we've had lots of issues with that, and so we're looking at we want to hear from the county staff on how we could potentially improve some of that, because there's been a long history of places where people walk down a sidewalk and end up in a place where they have to backtrack quite a bit to be able to cross the street to find their way to wherever they're going to. So with that, David, I know you sent out something to a limited number of folks talking about when we want to have this meeting, because the dates for both the pedestrian and the bicycle committee meetings would leave some significant people out of those meetings, that process.
Right. There's quite a few players involved. So there's this committee, and I'm the liaison for it. There's the bicycle committee, and my colleague Elwin Gonzalez is liaison for it. And then there are the people who would want to participate in presenting, as I just tried to say a minute ago, presenting sort of the ideal scenario, how MOTs are supposed to work. And they are some of the folks we were talking about earlier, like Nate Graham, who's public engagement specialist. And Nate's been working for the last couple of months to put that package together to be able to present. And then to add a little wrinkle, there was some idea that maybe this should be an in-person meeting. Well, as this group knows, we had an in-person meeting last month when we met at the Aquatic Center. And under the conditions we have now, which are post-pandemic, but we're still required to have hybrid meetings. So if you have an in-person meeting, it has to have an online component. It's really difficult to find a place to have those meetings. So it occurred to me yesterday, and this is why I sent the message out that Eric mentioned. I said, let's figure this out. Because we could potentially have an in-person meeting in June, say, and that might be enough time to get people back from their vacations and organize and have a meeting with 50 people in the room at a room somewhere. But I don't know that we could pull it off in May, because on May the 6th, which would be the bicycle committee's normal meeting, I forget, I think Cynthia's not available. No, I'm not available, sorry. And on May the 8th, which would be this committee's regular meeting, Cynthia's not available. So maybe this MOT program gets pushed to June. I don't know how we make this decision. It shouldn't be mine. There's a dozen people involved. I don't know how we figure this out. I guess we have to have a doodle poll or something.
John, you've had your hand up. John Armstrong.
I can lower it. It was sort of, I was going to ask about when we can get back to in-person meetings as we were started to talk about meetings, and then you guys started talking about it. So I'll lower my hand.
Okay. Well, that's a good question. I think, as David has brought up, at least at this point, there are kind of a limited limited number of places to have these hybrid meetings. So hopefully, maybe that's some feedback we need to give to the county that we're
Right.
Can I ask a quick question? So is that because of the audio visual requirements now? So you need a room that has the proper camera and
Yes.
microphone?
Yes, and they changed the ground rules in the building where I work, where we've traditionally met. We can no longer use, for some sort of not detailed security reasons, we can't use anything above the 3rd floor. That's where the restricted access is. You need passes to go above the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor is where the county board offices are. And so there's a big public room that we've used a lot. That's that last room we call the fishbowl. So the 3rd floor is available, the 2nd floor is available, and the 1st floor is available, and that's it. And there's so many meetings going on that they're always in demand, and they're booked weeks and weeks and weeks in advance. What I would suggest is that we try to find a meeting room at one of the dates in June, which would be our regular meeting or the PAC's regular meeting, and try to get it booked. And I would, try to pull some strings behind the scenes and get somebody to find one of those rooms for us. These are groups that haven't met in person for 4 years, except for last month, and it's time. It's time that we be able to do that. All the rooms in that building are set up for hybrid facilities or hybrid meetings with all the right technology. But I think we should put a claim in and claim one of those rooms, but it would make it June and not May.
I agree.
Outside of the one-off, like, is there a way, like, because we used to always meet, what was it, Dogwood or one of those first floor rooms, like every day or monthly on Wednesday, on the 2nd Wednesday, we had the Dogwood. Is that no longer the case? Like, it's booked?
I think this group has a legitimate claim to have a regular meeting space in the county building there on a regular recurring date. My recent experience was it was really hard to find the time to be able to do it once. So I think we need to turn that corner and request time and space to meet.
Yeah, I would.
I mean, it could be the Sequoia building, but it should be somewhere accessible with metro or a bus or something. We made the aquatic center work because we walked to it. That's not always convenient. It wouldn't be convenient in the wintertime, might not be convenient when it's 90 degrees outside. But I'll take Pam's vote of agreement. I'll try. I'll start tomorrow to see if we can't find a meeting room for June.
Let me ask this question. I know certainly a lot of meetings in the past have been in APS facilities. Is that something that we could use since they're all over the county as well?
It could be. I don't have familiarity with them. I don't know those places, and I don't know if they have the cameras and the microphones and the screens and computers and stuff.
Yeah, there's also the community centers.
Likewise, Jim, I just don't know how they're set up. And some of them have early closing hours. We got lucky at the aquatic center because they're open late at night. But for example, I think the library closes their doors at 8:30 or something. So we'd be,
Well, David, why don't you see what you can do? We'll be in touch with Cynthia and see if she kind of agrees with that as well.
Okay.
We're passing 9 o'clock here, so I don't want to hold people here too late. The other thing, David, why don't you and I try and meet about midpoint between now and the next meeting to start putting together a list of potential dates or potential speakers and dates for throughout the rest of the year based on what we've just talked about.
That's fine.
All right. Well, we unfortunately don't have a quorum to be able to deal with our minutes. So the minutes approval will have to wait. And I do not have anything else to add at this point. Does anybody else before we before we end our recording?
Nope.
All
Very
right,
good.
well, I want to thank everybody for attending. I thought we had some good discussions, and I think every once in a while it's good to have a meeting with just you know, sort of putting out there some of the issues that we have. So
All right. I'm going to stop the recording and bid you all a good night. Thank you very
all
much.
right, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.
Right.
Thank you.
Everyone. Good night.
Let me know when you have a recording and anything else from the meeting, David. Thank you.
I will.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.